This is what I understand. Justice Juan Merchan saying that the July Supreme Court ruling granting Trump presidential immunity doesn't apply in this case, as the evidence in this case pertains entirely to unofficial conduct. Can you break it all down for me?
Sure. So Donald Trump was convicted. A lot of us have been harshly critical of the prosecution. No harm, no victim, therefore no crime. Nevertheless, in New York, under New York law, by not keeping books in the manner in which the statutes prescribed, the president personally, or the president-elect, personally was convicted of mismanaging the corporate books. Okay, we all know that. He hasn't been sentenced yet, and in New York, the conviction is not final until sentencing.
Oh, okay.
After the conviction and before the election, the Supreme Court came down with its immunity decision. The immunity decision says if a president engages in behavior core to the presidency, that which is articulated in the Constitution, or official, that which the statutes tell him to do, it cannot form the basis of any criminal behavior. Only presidential behavior that is purely personal can form the basis of criminal behavior. Trump's lawyers jumped on this and said, look, even though the alleged crimes took place before he was in the White House, he did sign a couple checks in the Oval Office while he was in the White House, and those events were recounted to the jury. And because those events occurred in the White House while he was president, they shouldn't have been in the case. And if you take them out of the case, he wouldn't have been convicted. Trial judge said, well, I respect the Supreme Court's decision on immunity, as I must. Of course, I am subject to them. But nothing in this case was official to the presidency, and nothing in this decision impairs his ability to be president. Therefore, I'm going to deny this application to dismiss the case on the grounds of immunity. There's another dismissal arguing that because he's about to enter the White House, he shouldn't have this hanging over his head for 4 years. The judge will rule on that next week.
So what are the implications of this? So what happens next with this? I mean, does this just end here? What are next steps?
Great question, Charlotte. The government has said, we don't want to sentence him now because he's going to be president of the United States in a month. We recognize that. The people have spoken. We want this case, quote, put on the shelf for 4 years, and we'll revisit it in late January of 2029 when he has left the White House. Now, normally, when the government asks to delay a case like that, particularly a government that's been very aggressive about prosecuting a case, the judge will go along with it. He's got a couple of options. He could sentence Trump and suspend the sentence. He could sentence him to something that isn't even a wrist slap. He could dismiss the case. He could hold it in abeyance for 4 years. Who knows if Alvin Bragg will even be the prosecutor in 4 years? Who knows if this judge will still be on the bench in 4 years? I can't predict what's going to happen, Charlotte, because this has never happened before in history. So there's no precedent to guide those of us who examine these things and express opinions.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you. In all of your years of being a judge, have you ever heard of delaying something for 4 years? As you said, put it on a shelf, and then we'll revisit all of this in 2029.
No, I've never heard of that. I think that the government is bowing to reality. Reality is that he was elected president by an overwhelming majority, and because he is about to become the president of the United States, this thing in New York cannot and should not interfere with his presidency. The Supreme Court has recognized that, not in the immunity case, but in other cases. He cannot go to jail while he's president. He cannot be punished by a state court while he's the president of the United States. He cannot be punished by a federal court while he's the president of the United States. I have to put in a good word for Justice Merchan. I believe he's doing what the law tells him to do. This is a very unusual situation that he's in. I don't believe that anything that was immunized by the Supreme Court was a critical part of the evidence against Trump. Having said that, I think the case was garbage and it shouldn't have been prosecuted.
And you mentioned that DA Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan could both possibly not be in those positions in 4 years. So then what happens?
Correct. I say that because they have to run for re-election. In New York, prosecutors and judges are elected. What will happen then? Whoever's in office in 4.5 years will decide what will happen then. It may very well be these same two gentlemen, or it may be two other people.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.